Hi, my name is Michaela McGowan. Today I'm going to work with you on some activities from the textbook, Practical Critical Thinking. Here you can see the critical thinking activities that we are going to go through. What I'd like to start with are the agenda. We're going to be discussing using neutral language, testing for ambiguity and vagueness, reviewing headlines, and naming the doublespeak. So here, before we get started, I do want to touch on some vocabulary words that we're going to address. We've got argument, which is a statement that gives perspective, as well as value claim. And these are judgments that are made about someone or something. Usually it'll tell you if something is good or bad. And they usually have a lot of, emotion behind the statement. So using neutral language, I'm going to read you what they provided to me. And this one has a significant emotional response. And then I'm going to tell you how I rephrased it in a more neutral perspective. Those disgusting horde video games cause an increase in the violent behavior of our young people. It is this barbaric behavior that leads to murder and mayhem. I say we should ban children under the age of 18 from buying or playing these wretched video games. To change it, I changed the language so that it was more neutral and had less of a emotional response behind it. Mine would say, video games are not intended for children under the age of 18. Children do not have the cognitive ability to differentiate between appropriate and inappropriate behavior, which could be demonstrated on a video game. The value claim that they are trying to say is that video games are bad. The next one is regarding CDs. Their argument is that bootleg music CDs should be legal because the artists are greedy multimillionaires who rip off hardworking adults and kids who don't have a lot of spending money. Besides, it means less pollution because there will be less CDs tossed in the dump. My argument would be more neutral. It is an environmental benefit for musical artists to permit copying music. Aside from the discrepancies in financial resources between musicians and their listeners, musicians have an obligation to ensure their CDs are in the hands of their listeners, not clogging up the landfill. The value claim for this argument is that selling CDs for financial gain has a negative impact on the environment. Next, we're going to discuss ambiguity and vagueness. Ambiguity is a lack of clarity due to word, phrase, or statements having more than one meaning. And vague is when there is a range of interpretations. So I'm going to go through a variety of different statements, and we are going to determine whether or not it is ambiguous or vague. A majority of the 270 electoral votes is required to elect the President of the United States of America. Now, at first, I said it was no problem because I know that what the majority of 270 electoral votes means. Literally, if you were to cut it in half and then a little bit more. But I did say that the term a majority would be vague because we need to see how much is considered to be a majority. So that one I put for it was a problem and it is vague. Next, everyone in Congress is rich. I say that is a problem because there's a range of interpretations of the term rich. So I said that this term was a vague term. All right, here's a headline. USPS posts $5 billion loss. And the problem is that it's vague. A $5 billion loss of what? Revenue? Are they losing $5 billion worth of mail? There was not enough information for me to determine what they were referring to or the $5 billion loss. We could also say that that was a stock price loss. Let's see, letter D, headline, lack of brains hinders research. This one is a problem because there is a lot of different meanings behind the term lack of brains. So are we looking at lack of cadaver brains, lack of scientific brains, lack of manpower? It was ambiguous. Letter E, this one was funny. A dog for sale, eats anything and is especially fond of children. That is ambiguous because the dog eats anything and is especially fond of children. Does that mean that the dog eats the children? I would have changed up how it was phrased and not put it together. Eats anything and is especially fond of children. Let's look here. I think this one is the last one. I think that Maria spends an excessive amount of time texting her friends. That is vague because we don't know how much an excessive amount of time is. And so they could have been a little bit more specific in this term. So, okay, this one is really funny. So what I have to do is I have to provide two alternate meanings and choose the one that they probably mean and then why. So the headline says, lawyers back despite use of bug spray. And first interpretation is that the lawyers have come back in spite of using bug spray to keep them away. Or lawyers returned to the office after pesticides were sprayed at their office. And of course, I think they actually mean the second choice because the context clues in the first article or the first sentence of the article clarified that the bug spray was intended to get rid of yellow jackets. And it was the fumes that were giving the lawyers headaches, but they still came back to the office. Headline 2, police seize 14 elephants with fake IDs. So I envisioned police arresting 14 elephants and that they all showed them fake IDs. I was picturing like a cartoon video of them. Or police seized 14 elephants after raiding a gang who provided fake IDs. Again, I used choice number 2 because the context clues in the first sentence clarified that the fake IDs were provided by the gang members that happened to also hold more than a dozen elephants. Next, we're going to discuss doublespeak, inflated language, euphemisms, and jargon. So doublespeak are words or phrases that communicate in a misleading or distorted manner. Inflated language are words that elevate simple words to being more complex. Euphemism is a positive word or phrase intended to avoid an unpleasant reality. And jargon is specialized language to help a group of members communicate clearly and quickly, but they could result in misleading assumptions of prestige and authority. So here we've got to name the doublespeak. Teachers are classroom facilitators. I said that was inflated language. In every war, there is considerable collateral damage. Collateral damage would be a euphemism. My mom went to the powder room, I would say is also a euphemism. All systems are go when we have liftoff. I wasn't quite sure about this one. I said it's jargon because very often do you say liftoff, except if you're going to talk about in the context of rockets or some sort of aerospace engineering would discuss liftoff. The other option, I was thinking it would be euphemism, but I decided to go ahead and commit to jargon because the term liftoff we would really hear as lifting off and out of space. Next one says, Sam, what did the officer mean when she radioed taken at code 7? That one for sure was jargon. That's something that a officer would be more familiar with and the layman person might not know. And then customer, where will I find emergency exit lights? Emergency exit lights. I used inflated language because I think that it's just a fancy word for flashlights, because then the clerk responded with, oh, flashlights are on aisle 7. I don't think they would use emergency exit lights as jargon. I think it's more of an inflated language. And then for my resources, I was working out of this book, and I was able to reference a lot of the information from that book. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my video. Bye-bye.